Okay, let's take a look at some of the new version 10 Swimlane Timeline enhancements. I'd like to first start off with the new ability to create custom milestones. So now instead of just our existing milestones that you've had before, the diamonds and circles, the squares, etc., you can have your own custom user, or if you've got some in a shared folder, you can share them as well. I'll just bring up one here that's been created, which is the flag of the European Union. Um, One of the other things that we've added is the ability to increase the height of the milestones that are being displayed so that they're a little bit easier to see. And if you do some customization like that, you can use the align command to save all of those manual settings for the milestone type and height into a alignment setting and reapply it later. In addition to working with like bitmap images, this is Visio, so we can also work with vector images. We'll see here an example of the Janssen ambucetamide uh, formula molecule. There it is there. And again, we could change the height of that, make it a little bit larger there, easier to see. Um, Finally, we also support, other shapes. We've got some that come with the product in the demos folder. For example, here's a check mark that a particular milestone has been completed. Now you can do these manually, or you can also create a custom conditional format that will look at maybe percent complete. If it's 100% complete, then put this check milestone in there. Now these milestones are really easy to create. Let's look at how we can create one from scratch. In the ST Manage milestone option, you can define new. And here, if we right click on the page, we'll see we can import an existing milestone to kind of start with. We can show the document stencil that has standard shapes in there. And we can also easily save the milestone once we've created it. And we want to be trying to see if we can fit that milestone in the square that is created by these guidelines. So let's create one real fast here. I'll just we'll create a circle. Maybe we'll put a rectangle inside of it. So I'll just create one there on the side and we'll lock it in and maybe fill that with yellow. And maybe that is a milestone that we want to use. And we just simply go save milestone, and I'll just call this circle square. And let's go down here and right click on a milestone shape, change the milestone, and we'll look in the user area, and there's our circle square, and you can see the shape that we just created. So it's pretty simple to create these. You can share them with others using the shared folder option. Moving right along, another one of the new things is the ability to not only show the timeline rows at the top, but if you right click on the page border, you can also show the timelines at the bottom. So if you're scrolling down a really long report and you've scrolled so far down that you don't see the timeline rows, this is a new way to be able to scroll up and down and to have the timelines available to you. Another option is the ability to change and remap the start dates and the finish dates, baseline start and baseline finish. You can use any date that you want. In this case, Rather than using start, I'll use start 1, and rather than using finish, I'll use finish 1. Those are dates in my source file, whether it's coming from project or Excel. And you'll see now that the actual objects themselves, the bars, are still showing the start date as a date marker, but the actual date that we're showing from is the start 1. And I can show you that by managing date markers, and we'll add the start 1, and I'll put that on top just so that you can see now how start 1 now is where these bars are going to be coming. So we've mapped start and finish. Now I'm going to go back and change those back to the default values for the rest of the demonstration. Another one of the new features that we've added is the ability to access the user's documentation. So for example, if I click here on what's new, it's going to bring up the what's new document for us to look at. And if I ever wanted to get all the full detail, I can go into the user's guide. And so, for example, scroll down, and maybe I want to find out about the, let's say the custom fonts. If I click there, it's all, has hyperlinks from the table of contents to get us right where we want to be. So adding the documentation right to here within the actual ribbon menu. Another thing that we've done is we've added the ability to test for does not contain, in addition to equal to, greater than, less than, and this can work with either conditional formatting or with filters. I have one here that I've put together that you can see is project status does not contain on track. So if we look here, we'll see on track, that should go away because we should only see ones that project status does not contain on track, and there we are. We also have the ability to set up highlight windows. So for example, if I put a highlight window in this quarter, or I pick a specific milestone and I want to put a date line there, that's some key milestone I want to look at, and if I hit refresh, you'll see that those highlights and date line markers remain where they should be. I'm just going to pull them off for now. Another thing that we've done is we've added export to PDF. So if I take this now and I select, let's export this out, and it's popped up on my other screen, I'll drag it over here and you can see just makes it really easy to get that export to PDF. We also have, through our custom text settings, the ability to change just the title. So for example, I've created one already. If I go to my custom text and go change, you can see that this one, if I edit the header, I'm no longer showing the default field name, which from project comes from the summary row 0, but I have text in here, and I can edit that text and maybe call this, my new title, and hit OK. I can do the same for interval bar shapes, so it's not just the name. Right now you can see it's the name field. I could maybe make that be the name space parentheses, another field in our, which might be %complete, end parentheses. It's really easy to create these. In this case now I should see the title change to my new title when I hit save here, and you'll see that that happens. In addition, that can be applied to a style. So a style when you define a new one from the current page, it will, reference the current palette, font, text, alignments, formats, and legends that have been applied. So you can also create this one-click style that, does it all for you. So I now want to go into demonstrating how you can regroup. In the past, we allowed you to group by one field, and then we added group by two fields where each one was above the other. We had kind of a level 1, level 2 grouping. And we've added the capability to visualize that multi-level grouping with the first level on the left. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'll come in here to my grouping, and I've set one up, which is owner then status. We can take a look at that if I go change and owner and then status. So it's first by owner and then by project status. And notice that level 1 is to the left of level 2. So I hit save, and now you'll see a new visualization that the version 10 brings with the level 1, which is owners, on the left and rotated, and then all the level 2s. So in this case, like Ava Koritz has some projects on track, some late due to predecessor, and some late. So that's the new capability for multi-level grouping. In some cases, you might want to change the height of some of these swim lanes, and that's another thing that we've added. Let me regroup, in this case, by owner and then by type, and you'll see that some things get kind of squashed. So for example here, Kate Jordan got squashed here a little bit. You can right click on that swim lane name, go height specified swim lane, and specify how many sub rows that you want to put in there, and it'll actually center the tasks within that swim lane. So it's kind of a nice way to get this multi-level grouping, and then also specify a height for the swim lanes. And you have also the ability to reset that height back to what it was, but I'll leave it where it is right now. In addition to this, we have the ability now to do countdown timeline rows. So let's say I've got a launch coming up, and it's, the second quarter of 2014, and I want to highlight that as my launch period. I'll go to timeline rows, and I'll select custom, years, quarters, and then countdown. And let's give it a name, and that will be the name that shows up on the left side of the timeline row. We'll select the launch date here, and I wanted it to be 2014 and in the second quarter, so maybe we'll make that May. You can put any prefix you want here, so I mean I could use the actual word launch, but I kind of like, T minus 5, T minus 4, T minus 3, and let's use the countdown interval as quarters, and we'll go ahead and select that, and you'll see now that we have a new timeline row that we've created, and we have this T minus 0 is here in the second quarter. So, we can talk about that in our meetings and actually see, when crunch time is coming up. So hopefully you like that. You also have the ability to have multiple countdown timeline rows, and we now support as many timeline rows as you want. If you want to show years, quarters, months, down to days, so you can do that. Another new feature is the enhancement for special effects. So you can see here in this example, we're now using a beveling it gives it a three-dimensional effect and also a rounding of the edges. So I'll go back to that. This is simply by switching the palette. So, if I go to like the secondary palette, it takes that away, but I've set up a palette here that applies the special effects within it. In addition to that, we have the ability to add other kind of special effects, like, for example, you can put glow around milestones. You can conditionally apply a glow around a milestone and change its shape. So, for example, in this one here, it applied it so it kind of jumps out at you, and that might be something that you want to do. So I'll just go to this one, project status with a glow around the milestones. And here's the new legend capability that we've added, that you no longer are forced to have a legend tied to a format. It's been decoupled, so I could select any legend I want with a conditional formatting that's been applied. So for example, maybe I want to show, the critical mandatory one, or I want to show strategic roadmap. So it's totally up to you. In some cases, maybe you have an all-encompassing format, but when you apply a view, maybe you're only applying a few of those in what tasks are visible. You could create multiple versions of a single legend that just has the ones that you want shown in that legend. And let's take a look at how easy it is to actually create a new legend. I'll bring this one, which is a flat two-dimensional legend and doesn't have any of the effects. And let's go ahead and create a new one. So I'll define new, and now I'm going to import that legend that I just showed you, the project status legend that was sort of flat, and we'll apply the effects from Visio as well as the rounding. We'll go with the most rounding here on that, and maybe I want to increase the height of the text and make it bold, and that's my new legend. So I simply right click and go save legend, give it a new name. Maybe I'll call this project status effects. And if I come in here now, I have that project status effects available in the X legend for me to choose from. Another thing that we've done is for the format, rather than forcing you to re-enter everything from scratch, you can import an existing conditional format. So it really helps jumpstart you. So for example, if I bring this one in, you can see all the conditions that are part of this. I'm already there, so maybe if I just want to tweak it a little bit, I can go ahead and edit the settings in here, get it the way I want, save it, give it my new name. And so this import an existing legend or import an existing format really helps you jumpstart the creation of those. Another thing we've added is the ability to have different fonts for the date markers. So you can see here that we've applied a new font that makes that differs between the interval bars and the milestone. So just adding that flexibility. The last thing I want to show you is that we've added some new support for international languages. So if I go to my control panel here and go to region and go to select maybe French Belgium, there we go. And now if I start up the Swimlane Timeline, and we'll see that it's actually going to use the French language for the date markers and for the timeline rows. So that's a new capability here. So let's get this, and we'll now, if I zoom in here, you can see that we have the French month abbreviations. And if I go to the timeline rows and go to years, quarters, months, you'll see that the months there are also in French. Okay, so that's a real quick overview of the new features and capabilities. I hope you get a chance to try out the version 10 soon, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at www.visibility.biz or www.swimlanetimeline.com, either one.